Hey everyone, thank you for joining us today on Beyond Real Estate with Jalick, where we strive to edutain, that is, educate a little and entertain more. Here we discuss topics surrounding hashtag dadlife, briefly talk about a current hot topic within the real estate industry, and end with business bookend before getting to know someone just a little bit better. Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today on Beyond Real Estate with Jalick. And today we wanted to jump into hashtag dadlife. We're mixing it up a little bit. We're going to put that on the front end and wanted to dive into this topic, combat sports. And is that something that we should do? Obviously, it's something we can do with our little ones as we grow up as parents. So, Jalen, I understand you have kind of direct experience with this specific one, both for yourself and now your little one, Emerson, who's just turned 4 just last week. So tell us more about that and what your thoughts are on combat sports with youth.
Yeah, well, it's definitely something that a lot of parents have concerns over because with combat sports, you think combat. So my kid is going to get hurt. I did train in jiu-jitsu for over a year, got my blue belt, did some competitions, never had anything more serious than a black eye from a competition while choking other people out, which is always fun to say that's just your casual hobby. But yeah, it's something that also allows you to have confidence. And then on top of confidence, you become very body aware. You kind of understand and recognize what's going on with your body a bit more because that's the nature of the sport. And also it kind of gives you that confidence so that you understand that you can take care of business if you needed to. So that is the main reason why we got our 4-year-old into it. So he's a more sensitive little guy. And I love him to death, but something to toughen him up just a little bit. And then also he's a very long, lanky boy. So again, just something that can allow him to be more aware of his body is the main reason why we jumped into it. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see what he does because there's also discipline associated with that. So yeah, that's the quick and dirty of it all.
Let me ask you real quick, because you said there's nothing like knowing how to choke someone out for a hobby. I assume 4-year-olds don't learn that technique. Is that fair to say? And don't need to?
Yeah, generally. Yeah. 4-year-olds learning to choke it. No, but there is, when it comes to the 4-year-old stuff, they do learn takedowns.
Okay.
So he can successfully put someone on the ground. So it's more the stand-up fun stuff versus the actual ground wrestling battle time that you learn the more advanced you get. Yeah.
Okay.
But choking out, that would be that's what he learns at home with Dad. Dad's like, let me show you something, son. We're about to go to the next level. Let's take this to the mats.
Got it. Well, where my head goes with combat sports and what you just elaborated on a little bit is I think there's a ton of crossover. I come out of the soccer world where I think of ABCs, agility, balance, coordination, combat sports, based on what you just said, check. One that we in the soccer space would constantly get would be how do I get my kid to be more mentally tough? I think an individual sport like a combat sport, you can't hide. It's just you and your competitor. I think that's a very healthy environment to develop that mental toughness part and that self-confidence, as you alluded to. Because again, you don't have teammates. So I think for that reason alone.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's definitely, you're solely, it's also something that you can't blame anyone else for if something goes south. I mean, you can try, but ultimately it comes back to what could I have done better? What do I need to train on? So yeah, that mental toughness aspect, you do carry the full weight of the outcome.
Yep.
Whereas with a team, I think some mental toughness is kind of gained in other ways, where it's understanding that you're a part of a team and that you take some responsibility for whatever happened. But that's where that mental toughness, but that's something that has to be like coached, and that's
For sure.
something that has to be
Over time. Yep.
fostered a lot more, than just an individual sport. It's like, who are you going to blame? Like,
Right.
the other guy cheated. Well, you should have done something better. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't see him cheat.
Yeah. Well, and a couple other boxes that I like that combat sports still check. It's still a social environment, right? You're working with people.
Oh, yeah.
It's not only an individual sport, even though, like you said, from a blaming standpoint, from an accountability standpoint, it always comes back to you. Nonetheless, he's in a class of what? How many kids?
Yeah, I mean, today or on Friday, which was his first day, it was at least another 7 kids, and that was a small class apparently. So, yeah, there's definitely, and you also see with a belt system, like, oh, okay, that kid 1 stripe on their white belt, that kid has 2. You can kind of very easily pick out who the leaders are and see what they do, or the ones that have trained longer, and see what they do and how they carry themselves, as a visual representation of, hey, that person I know is ranked higher than I am.
Yep.
And so you're able to kind of see, like, okay, what is that like versus someone else that's new? Okay, I'm probably closer to that someone else that's new.
Yeah.
So, what's going on there. But you also, you kind of have to make friends with these people, because either you're pissing people off because you're hurting them and choking them if you don't want to, and if you're not listening to coaching and stuff.
Yeah.
Or you're that person that people can enjoy, that can enjoy, rolling with and practicing with and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's really 2 different things. Yep.
Sure. And then the contact part, I like the fact that that's a challenging one there. Again, coming from a more of a space of soccer, it's parents would ask the question, how can I get my kid more physical and dealing with that contact? And I'm not saying combat sports are your answer, but I think it definitely checks that box that has to come out. Again, it's that mental capacity that it definitely challenges, but it makes individuals that partake in that okay with having contact. Because I think for sports like a basketball, where every time you do touch someone, usually so often it's a foul. In soccer, there's that very much a gray area. Oh, that kid extended their arm versus they went shoulder to shoulder. Again, there's some contact, but it's relatively minimal versus combat sports, which is you need to figure out how to defend yourself. Otherwise, you are going to get a foot to the face or something to your ribs, and you need to figure out how to maneuver and take care of yourself. So there again, the physicality naturally comes, I think, within that space, which I don't think is a bad thing, because again, you're figuring out your body and you're figuring out a lot of things that present challenges. So I think that's a healthy scenario.
Yeah, and I mean, if I don't agree with that, then it's like, what did you just get your kid into, and why are you paying so much money for it?
Yeah. So what was another reason you did it?
Yeah.
What was another reason you did it?
Conor McGregor, big
for you
Irish
personally,
boy, and
that was you personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that looks fun. I like, I don't do too much of the striking stuff. I can do it. I've been told that I have a nice natural punch that I can throw. And when you're a big boy and can throw a good punch, that 200 pounds that I carry can do some damage. So, but I don't do that too much, but I do. I like the ground game more, whereas Conor McGregor is more of that stand-up guy.
Okay.
So, that was my personal reason. It was just like, 5 years ago when I first, or 6 years ago when I first started, I was like, I want to I like that guy's swagger and want to learn to do something like that and compete and stuff. And it was fun. I did some jiu-jitsu competitions. Had got third place in my first one and second place in my second one, and yeah, nine wins, 2 losses. 8 of those 9 wins were via submission with choking people out. So
Okay.
it was
Well. Let me ask you that then. So
enjoyable.
you just elaborated a little bit on your personal experience. How easy was it to talk with Monica about your 4-year-old getting into a combat sport? What was her take as a mom?
Oh yeah, that was a very easy in, because she
Wow.
understood too what it meant for how I used it, and especially the training that we have. It's never combat first when it comes to self-defense aspects.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that they teach when it comes to self-defense is just get out of that situation. So self-defense is something different than competition,
Mm-hmm.
even though you can use competition, what you learned there, as an offensive weapon too. But yeah, so, and it's just the confidence that you have and the discipline that you have to have in order to be good at this sport, jiu-jitsu in particular, but I think almost any combat sport is something that she saw a clear value in, and she wanted to be in it too. So she jumped right in, full-fledged now too. She goes, her classes and Emerson's classes are usually at about the same time.
Real quick, for those of you that
enjoys...
don't know Monica, so Jalen's talking about he packs a punch behind his almost 200 pounds. Monica is not almost 200 pounds. She's all of what, like 5'2" and 100, maybe.
Yeah.
Wet.
She's definitely smaller than than I am. I'm 6'2" and float around the 195, 205, somewhere in between there on a daily basis. She is nowhere close to that. I got 70 pounds on her on a bad day. Yeah. Like that's if she just had a full meal. So yeah. I've at least 70 pounds on her. So yeah, it's but there's that confidence aspect too. She's like, yeah, I want to know how to fight, you know? So it's like, yeah, it's a valuable skill to have.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Jalen, anything else that you wanted to hit on in this one?
No, I think we can wrap up this segment.
Okay. Well, let's segue into our next piece and talk about some real estate. I think an interesting graph I came across, in the last couple of weeks, not even months, last couple of weeks, is 77% of individuals still think we're in some kind of housing bubble waiting for it to burst. And almost 50% of all agents out there, 44 to be exact, 44%, also believe we're in some kind of housing bubble. It's one thing to have an opinion. I like to stick to facts and objective information as much as possible when making those subjective opinions. Objectively, the credit scores. Let's start there because you're a lender. Credit scores for those individuals that have less than a 620 credit score, it's much, much lower numbers than the mid 2000s when I don't know, just opportunities to get loans were so much easier. Jalen, can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that came from the 2008 crash was people being underqualified for the amount of money that they were given. So a lot of people were given more money than what they could actually afford. And that was through a lot of shady practices that a lot of lenders did back in the day. When you look at what they were doing and what caused the 2008 crash and what caused a lot of foreclosures, and that's why we saw a lot of house values plummet during that time, which was really one of the few times in all of history that we've seen prices plunge that much, and that's why it was such a big revolt against it. That is not happening today. Credit scores, 620 is usually the at least minimum. There are loan programs that you can get with a lower score, but the thing that comes along with those is you bringing more money to the table in order to offset that bad credit. So we are not in the same way. And that statistic is very scary, saying 40% of realtors. I think that should be a very easy litmus test for anyone shopping for a realtor. Do you believe that we're going to be in a bubble? Yes. Or that we're in a bubble? I'm not hiring you because you don't know what you're talking about. Let's move right on to the next guy. So,
Well,
yeah,
and
Nick,
you touched on a couple things.
That's
Yeah, you touched on a couple
Yep.
of things that I want to dig into, which is one, inventory. We were in such a different place inventory. We had overproduction at that time, and which negatively and
Yes.
created depreciation. I mean, all over America, they saw, unfortunately, housing at that time depreciated. With that in mind, for those prospective home buyers, there are always going to be moments in time that things will depreciate for various reasons. But in the mid 2000s, one of the driving factors was overproduction. Right now, we have underproduction. Like, inventory is so low, not just in California and Colorado, but all over the United States. So that's going to ultimately drive up, which alludes to the next point, appreciation, because of a simple piece called supply and demand. There's not enough supply to meet the demand of so many buyers.
Economics.
Yeah. And there again, for the pessimists out there, you can believe what you want to believe. But again, I want to use objective information to form my opinions. And that's what objective information is telling us right now. We are underproduced when it comes to the amount of houses available. And therefore, houses are appreciating. And virtually nobody in the United States right now is in a bad spot if they own a house because of the amount of appreciation just in the last 3 years alone. So, Jalen, thoughts on anything?
It's been
on this?
absolutely insane. And let's expand on that a little bit more for those that are still pessimistic about where we're at now. If you make any comparison to 2008 to what's going on now, you already are clearly not seeing what's actually happening now and how these are two completely different markets. When you touched on people were overbuilding, people were getting very, very high on building as much as they could. And that's kind of like what we see with the education sector, where once students were able to borrow as much as they needed and there wasn't any worry about bankruptcy, they were lent more money, and so tuitions went up. Same thing was happening with the housing market in 2008, in that builders saw anyone and everyone was getting a loan, and so they were building as many houses as they could because they knew they would be able to sell them very quickly. That's not the case anymore, and in fact, we're seeing with the supply chain issues even bigger problems by not being able to construct houses right now. This is a pure supply and demand versus people getting very wanting to just make money at this point, and that's why houses are crazy, or whatever your reasons may be that you think this is happening. It is not going to ever crash, and it's not in a bubble like it was in 2008. These are two hugely different economic scenarios that we're dealing with, and I think it would be smart of anyone that's thinking of even starting the home buying process to seriously look into it
and ask questions, right?
Nick, do you have that conversation?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it starts with prospective homebuyers, not just grabbing onto an opinion that someone's passionate about and be like, oh my God, you're right. Yeah. Like, you have such a defined idea that this is a bad time to buy. I need to wait 3 more years. Just be mindful, if things continue to appreciate, it's going to be that much harder 3 years from now to afford a home. Not to mention,
which in all likely they will too.
Yeah. and not to mention the interest rates, right? Those are starting to tick up. Who's to say where they're going to be in 3 years? I don't know. You don't know as a lender. So that's anybody's guess. So there again, it's play whatever card you want. Just be mindful. Or I guess our suggestion is ask questions and ask different people. Don't just set on one person being the end all be all. And the fourth piece that I wanted to bring up is foreclosures. That was a big segment that was a very saturated segment of housing there in the mid 2000s, and it really drug on into 2009, 10, and even 11 for a lot of cities. And I think that's a dramatic difference today. Lenders don't want to just take a house from a person and take all the debt associated with that and do a bunch of short sales. Like, that was not beneficial for anybody. And then for banks to just sit on these properties for 2, 3, 4 years, they're so much more willing to work with a person that's in a tight situation, whether it be job loss or whatever.
Yeah.
So, thoughts there?
we saw that with COVID and forbearance.
Yep.
There was a lot of people that were able to be put on forbearance. A lot of people don't also realize, so that was a thing. So
Jalen, what's
also
forbearance?
in 2008? Let's get a little bit of forbearance. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about mortgage history and then why that applies to forbearance. So mortgage history, so Fannie and Freddie are government-backed entities, and that it means that the federal government basically is now in the business of buying mortgages, whereas in 2008, Fannie and Freddie Mac were the independent entities that were the secondary market for mortgages. So you'd buy a mortgage from X company, they would then sell it to Fannie or Freddie in order to make a profit.
Okay.
That's a very big oversimplification, but let's just keep it simple.
Yep.
So when a lot of people defaulted on their mortgages, Fannie and Freddie also effectively defaulted, right? And so that's where the government bought them out, became a government-sponsored entity. So now we go to today. The government still has control over Fannie and Freddie. That's why the Fed is the one that makes the mortgage rates that for the secondary market, for their secondary market at least, and they're the ones that buy a majority of mortgages. So forbearance, they have the power, and they used it to say, we're not just foreclosing on people. We're not just a for-profit business like in our previous models of what Fannie and Freddie were. We're a government entity, and we can actually do something that's in the benefit of homeowners that might have lost their job or were put on leave from their current job. So we're just going to push their mortgage payments back, or we're going to let them slowly accrue into a side bucket that they'll have to pay off eventually.
Yep.
And then coming out of that, they've come up with regulation that you can get a refinance and you can get caught up on your mortgage payments. You can do a lot of different things that was not available, but the safeguards that were put in place because of 2008 are not allowing that same housing bubble and huge amount of foreclosures to happen. Foreclosures don't happen for the same reason that they happened in 2008.
Yep.
Primarily as the main reason of foreclosure. I mean, there's still people that just can't make their mortgage payment.
Right. For months at a time, not
that's
missed a
one
month.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And so there's a lot of that. And then on top of that, people that have been able to afford a mortgage have been given a loan. These haven't just been people given mortgages with what they literally were no doc loans. Oh, you say you're a doctor and you make $300,000? Great. I'm going to have your qualifying income as $300,000. Oh, I don't need anything to verify that income. That was pre-2008. This is now, I need 30 days of pay stubs. I need your past 2 years of tax returns if we're going FHA. Like, there's a lot.
Right.
And also, that little NMLS ID number that you hear on the back end of every mortgage commercial, that's a thing now. Before 2008, you didn't even have to be licensed to be a mortgage lender. You could one day be like, I'm going to start selling mortgages. And then the next day be like, and I'm out.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we're in a different world.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I think those four primary drivers are what I've seen to differentiate us from, again, the mid 2000s. Again, you're talking about foreclosures. You're talking
100%.
about lending practice / credit scores. You're talking about inventory, and you're talking about appreciation is at historical highs. We've never seen this amount of appreciation. Not to mention, within that appreciation, there's approximately 35-ish% of people that own their home outright, meaning they have no mortgage payment. So that's 35% of America that says, yep, I don't even have to deal with a monthly payment anymore. So again, that's just a fact. That's not my opinion.
And then, yeah. And reverse mortgages are not predatory anymore because they also have the equally high amount of regulations. So all the elderly or anything like that might have lost their job and were forced into early retirement, they have options that they didn't have in 2008. So they're also not losing houses at the same rate. But Nick, I'd be curious to know your opinion on what do you see? I'm going to try to coax you into being a fortune teller here. What do you see will let the market, because we've talked about this a few times, that it's not a bubble, but it might level out.
Yep.
What would be some of those indicators that we can expect? Hey, once X, Y, or Z happen, then the market will start to level out and we'll see home prices, instead of jumping huge leaps and bounds, seemingly every quarter.
Yeah.
They're going to be more back to their historic rate of 3-6% appreciation.
Right. Yeah. So if you date things back to 91, average national appreciation is 4.14%. California just last year alone got 19%. So what are some indicators to say, okay, when might we see that 4 or 5% as you just alluded to? You're already starting to see it with interest rates. That's going to naturally slow things down because it doesn't make it as lucrative, to refinance. For those pessimists out there, again, you will hear the news talk about, oh my God, we're down 300% of refinances from year to year. Of course we are. And of course we're going to be, because you can't get 2 and 3% anymore.
Yeah.
Naturally, people are going to stop
doing that. It was the same
doing
talking point on home purchases.
Yeah.
When the interest rates went down.
Right.
We're saying home purchases just plummet.
Right.
Well, of course, everyone's refinancing.
Yeah. Or it's just not as lucrative, especially for investors, because not only are interest rates going up for first-time home buyers, that means as second property owners, for those that own a second, third, fourth home, they're getting an even higher interest rate. So if I'm a first-time home buyer right now and I'm getting somewhere around between 4.5% to 5%, you can bet an investor's seeing mid 5, 6. Would that be fair to say, there, Jay?
Yeah, I'm not your wife.
Right. Sorry, Bree. Shut up, Bree.
I might be pretty, but I'm not that pretty. No. Yeah. Fannie and Freddie also. Here's the government intervening again. Take what you will with it. A fun statistic that I like bringing up because I'm in favor of this personally as a mortgage lender. They tacked on a nice little fee for if the mortgage is for a second home or an investment property. So they're really trying to disincentivize investment and second home properties.
Yep.
And the reason, I don't know what it's like in California, but 48% of homes in the Denver metro area are rentals.
Wow.
Like, oh, I wonder why no one can get their first time home. Oh, because investors have already come in and swooped them all up.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that also doesn't help when giant mega companies, mega investors come in and just buy 30, 40 homes over asking price with cash.
Right. No, and
you're going to push a lot of people out of home ownership.
100%. In California, it has not passed yet. It's in the news recently in the last week specifically. They're talking about decentivizing that exact practice by taxing approximately 25% of a sale if you don't have the property for at least 3 years. So there again, if I want to turn it around within the year, within even 2 years, I'm going to be taxed, at a 25% rate. Again, has not passed in California, but that is in conversations. Like you said, because it takes a lot of first-time home buyers out. What's that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it might be worth looking at it. That's to have 50% of the homes in an area, especially the Denver metro area in particular, that's growing so rapidly. And this can be for any metro area.
Sure.
Investors are going to see those trends. They're going to start shopping there. They're going to be able to pick up a lot of those less expensive properties or the properties that do need the maintenance or do need the renovation. And they're going to buy and hold or flip. And that's going to jack up what the natural ecosystem of what a home buying situation is for that community. Cause it's, you can't buy that fixer upper anymore.
Right.
It's like,
And I'll end with this because you had asked, what other indicators might there be to say, with this historic rates of appreciation, will anything slow down? Naturally, supply is going to increase, right? Because there again, just like we're seeing national records being created for amount of home sales and appreciation, we're also at record historic levels of lowest inventory ever. California just set a record in December. Yes. At like 1.2 months of inventory, which again was its lowest in its history. So is that going to be a forever? No. And especially now that we're coming into the spring months, then it's summer, housing market's cyclical. More people tend to move late spring in the summer. Why? Because kids are out of school. It's just more of a natural time for our culture to make moves. If you're going to make moves, which means more homes for sale. So I think that's another indicator.
Yep.
That's going to slow down
And
appreciation.
that supply chain.
Yep.
Supply chain is getting built back up. That's one of the reasons why a lot of builders had to slow down, was not because they didn't have a need to build, but they just didn't have this. When everyone was joking about lumber prices and being like, "Oh yeah, I saw a piece of particle board on the freeway, nearly stopped because that's worth more than my car at the moment." And it's like, yeah, that's as the sawmills and as all these vital components that no one thinks of that go to the supply chain start being able to revamp up work as all of America gets back to work, you're going to see homes being built more quickly and more people being able to afford those new home prices. So perfect. All right. Let's leave it off and let's segue right into our final and new segment. This is going to be replacing. So can you relate? I can never. There's so many things that I'm like, what is our past segments? And we're going to jump right into business bookend. So besides just a fun play on words, it's going to be a time where Nick and I dive deep into either a book, if the book has a singular concept, or we're going to discuss one chapter from a business book. So this is going to be a perfect segment for anyone that has or that is or knows a small business owner, an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, which is what I think they call us in that instance, or corporate entrepreneur, something like that. Basically, if you work for another company, but you still got to bring home the bacon. So these are going to be cool concepts, books that Nick or I have read, and we're really excited because we're avid readers. I'm actually in the middle of To Sell Is Human by Daniel Pink. Got that with my Audible credit.
Nice.
Absolutely love it so far. Yeah, Daniel Pink, he just kind of crushes them, doesn't he?
Yeah,
He doesn't.
Yeah, he's good.
He doesn't
He's
play
good.
nice when it comes to books. Yeah, very Malcolm Gladwell-esque, but with business. So it's like, oh, okay, I can get behind this. But it would be most fitting on the first segment of a podcast that we split into micro content that we then share across social media platforms. Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. So he is a man that seems to always be on the edge of whatever's going on out there in the space of, with the NFTs and stuff, I'm like, I don't know if that's social media necessarily anymore, but digital realm.
On the edge and outspoken.
On the very edge.
Yep.
Yeah, on the edge. And he curses a lot, drops some F-bombs. So I think he's relatable in that way, that for those of us who curse like sailors. Even in front of our Gary Vee created this amazing book called Crushing It. It is all about social media and how he grew his family's liquor store from I think $3 million business into, I think he says over 64 million. If I can't remember correctly. Nick, I believe you were the one that actually turned me on to it. So what do you think of Gary Vaynerchuk as this business mogul, and what's your favorite things that you kind of utilize from him on a daily basis in your business?
Yeah, I think things that have stuck with me is definitely being authentic, being empathetic. I think that's something I can relate to, because being in real estate, I've wondered, can you successfully navigate this space without being what I think a lot of people foresee salespeople-ish, and that is a prick, a dick, someone who doesn't think through before they talk. And some people would say, or would argue, that he doesn't think before he talks. Nonetheless, he is very, very authentic. And he keeps coming back to stop trying to make other people happy. Stop looking at social media as a tool to gauge your happiness, and start figuring out what is it that truly makes you happy. Because again, now you can be authentic. You don't have to try to be somebody you're not. That I can relate 100%. To wholeheartely.
Yep.
Putting yourself out there, being vulnerable. I know there again, he leads by example when it comes to that piece. You're never going to wonder what his opinion is on something. Whether you like it or not, he's going to tell you exactly how he feels about it. And sometimes being vulnerable isn't always being about being outspoken. Maybe it's more about just sharing an experience that is a little embarrassing, right? Wow, you're human, versus putting up this fake wall all day saying, I'm so happy, and you're really not. So those are a couple
we're not
pieces.
the Kardashians.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are a couple characteristics that have really stuck with me. That I think we all need those reminders from time to time, because they're not just something you can hear once and then you're good for life. So how about you?
And that's what you get when you read those types of books hopefully you're reading a book to get something out of it, whether it's a fantasy novel or whatnot, but especially if it's a business book, how can I actually apply this to what I'm doing? If I actually want to learn from this other person, if they're writing a book on it, the perception is that they must know 100%, but then there's also people that live it and show that what they are preaching is something that can be repeatable, but you got to do it the right way. And authenticity is definitely a huge aspect of that. I think a lot of, especially salespeople, try to hide, to your point, any flaws, hide who they really are. And that's just not authentic. It's not. And why would you want that? Like, do you really want that image of you, or do you? Yeah, it's almost two-faced, right? In my opinion,
maybe, but I also think it's a fear of, well, I have to help everybody, and like something that has stuck with me, and I don't know that it's a Gary Vee specific, but I don't need to be the right real estate agent for everybody. I needed to be the best real estate agent for anybody. And I think some people have this unfortunate fear of, I have to be the best for everybody. You're never going to be the best for everybody. And that's okay. But some people struggle with that, oh, that person didn't like me. That's okay. Because that all that means, if they didn't want to work with you, they're probably not a good person to work with in the first place, which is fine. Again, we all have preferences. And I think that's a very key and important characteristic when they're trying to find the right lender to work with, the right agent to work with. What is their personality? Do you mesh with that person? Otherwise, you're going to be pissed off and saying, Jalen just doesn't get me, or Nick just doesn't get me.
Yep. And it's going to also turn you off. And a lot of people need to realize this. And we're going to bring this all right back to social media, because that's where Gary Vee really flourishes, is his use of social media. But when you have that bad interaction with whoever you used, whether it's mechanic or really anyone, any service-based industry, you start painting that picture that that's how the industry itself works, and not that you got a bad one. So when you're being inauthentic in your business and you're trying to force basically a square peg in a round hole, you're not doing your clients a service. And having that upfront conversation and being true to yourself in that way also just makes, being true to yourself, again, you can't enjoy what you're doing if you're constantly pretending to be something else. Right. That's something that I had to learn after being in the industry for over a year. I was like, what I'm not good at? I'm not good at going to the bar and talking to people. Just not in my personality. I can't just go and start talking real estate. And you have to understand your weaknesses. You have to, and you have to play to your strengths, understand your weaknesses, and really dive down. And what do I want to be? So, how do you implement that on a daily basis in your business, Nick?
Implement what? Sorry. Implement what specifically?
Oh yeah. Being authentic to yourself.
How do I do that on a daily? I think there again, I wouldn't venture far off what you just said of know what you're good at. I think that's the best way to be authentic, is that's how you're going to be real and feel like you're fulfilled to a degree, because you know what you can do, and as well as you can do it. You touched on something earlier about having ideas, getting something from a business book, but then actually applying it is the key. And I know you touched on that, but that's another thing that Gary Vee constantly says. It's not just about having these ideas in your head, right? It's about implementing those ideas and making them real and experimenting and trying things. And guess what? You're going to mess up and you're going to fail, but you don't know unless you try it, right? And I think keep moving forward, keep taking steps forward. And something else that really sticks with me, and this goes back to answering your question, be patient, because I think that's the challenge of social media world, right? We can click a button and we can look at whatever we want to look at. You can put whatever filter you want to filter on it, and I don't have to listen to you if I don't feel like it. And I can do all that with a push of a button. Life doesn't work that way. And I think it's difficult for us sometimes to differentiate the walls that we can so easily put up in social media world. We can't replicate that speed when we want to be successful at something. They're two totally contradicting things. So I think that's a challenging aspect. Nonetheless, something that I try to remind myself of in terms of being patient and keep planting seeds, and then don't just plant them and ignore them. You got to water them, and you got to come back to them. You got to take care of them.
Yep. Water them with things of value. Everything too needs to be a tool. Like Gary Vee talks about a lot of great, he does in the book Crushing It. He shows you a lot of different examples of people crushing it in different industries. The one that always sticks out to me, and this is because I've had a lot of conversations with them, are financial advisors. It is the example he gives in there of the person that actually goes out and tries to basically do what no other financial advisor is willing to do, and that's actually post on social media with their own original content. Financial advisors are very afraid of that. But you know how you differentiate yourself? By doing something different from everyone else, finding a way to do it the right way, and then running with it. And so that's a huge thing that any of us can do. I mean, a podcast, for instance, this has by no means been a very easy and straightforward process for us. There has been times, I mean, we're recording this, we had a clear costume change, if you're watching this, between our first segment and our last two, because technology started fighting us on the day that we first tried to record this podcast, and we could only get through one segment. So that ability to understand that, there's going to be road bumps and there's going to be things that you need to overcome. You kind of need to just be in that right mental space to understand that that's an inevitability.
Sure.
Nick, I'll let you close us out with any final thoughts.
Yeah. Final thought is who you surround yourself with plays a massive ability and is a massive influence on your ability to be successful. Because I think a lot of people surround themselves with voices that don't encourage or don't support what it is that they're doing. And that's going to play a factor in the outcome, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand, if you don't like the voices around you, you can change that. You have full autonomy to control that one. And I think that's one that people choose to put on the periphery or put their head in the sand and say, why I'm not, getting where I want to get, but they choose to surround themselves with individuals that don't support their dreams or what they want to accomplish. So I think that's the last thing that comes to mind when trying to be authentic and accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves.
Perfect. Great way to end it. Thanks again for this new week, Nick. Promise everyone one more week, as we do every week. And I'll see you next week then, Nick. Thanks again for joining me today. This was a pleasure as always.
Absolutely. For those of you listening out there, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when and where you're listening. Have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Hey, thanks again for listening. If you want to hear more of Jalen McKenna, Colorado's mortgage dad, and his take on the Colorado real estate market, or just mortgages and mortgage news in general, check out the links below.
Also, check out the links below for more information on products, books, or references made in this podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share.